hearing for the Town of Normal's Community Development Block Grant Program, or CDBG program. Specifically tonight, this public hearing, which will run from 6 to 7 here virtually, is about the town's proposed action plan for program year 2021 to 2022, which is essentially the operating budget for the CDBG program. So, as has been the case here for the last year now, these public hearings have been taking place virtually, and hopefully that's not the norm for too terribly much longer. But as such, this, of course, is taking place over Zoom and being live streamed on the town's YouTube page. So we do have one public commenter here, and I'll introduce him here in a moment. But he's the first public commenter we've had for one of these virtual public hearings for the CDBG program, so that's pretty great. So although at this point, with one person just having registered, we'd like to have more. So if anyone happens to be watching on YouTube now between 6 and 7, there's some instructions in the description below the town's logo that provides my contact information on how to join this public hearing. So if you get a hold of me, either at tlong, T-L-O-N-G, @normal.org, or by calling or texting me at 309-212-6881, I'll send you some information on how to join the Zoom meeting here, get you logged in, and I can either start over my presentation or we'll jump back, whatever we got to do to accept your comments here, and then also answer any questions you might have. So at any point between now and 7 p.m., just get a hold of me at either of those means I just provided, and we'll get you admitted here. So with that, we do have one public commenter, and just to set us on the record here, I wondered, Mr. Bush, if you could introduce yourself and maybe provide some background on any affiliations you have while you're here tonight, and then also your address, just for the record.
Good evening, Eric Bush, 309 East Ironwood Drive, Normal, 61761. I am interested in CDBG as I've held roles in the community with community action, regional planning. I'm a former city administrator myself, and I just have some interest in carryover funds this year. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. As I said, you're our first person to take part in one of these virtual public hearings, so we're very happy to have you here. And if it's all right by you and folks out there on YouTube, the way we've been conducting these here is that I do as brief a presentation as I can to just kind of walk through what's being proposed, or what we're requesting some input on, and then just open the floor up to comments. And so in your case, Mr. Bush, after I get through my presentation, I'll open the floor to you to provide questions, anything you have, any questions you might have or any comments you'd like to make. And then I'll flash up a screen that just provides my contact information on how to join the public hearing here. So with that, I'm going to open up a PDF and share my screen, and we'll get started. Okay, I think we have it here. So let me actually, why don't I jump back to the beginning here? Okay, so as I said, this is a public hearing for the town's CDBG program, and in particular, its proposed program year 21-2022 action plan. I just want to start off by giving folks some background on what an action plan is, what CDBG is generally, and how these plans tie, or kind of work together. And so the town is a municipality that receives CDBG funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Any municipality that does receive these funds is called an entitlement community by HUD. And in order to use these funds, a municipality has to come up with a 5-year plan, and then also annual plans that kind of tie back to the goals and activities, projects that are proposed in the 5-year plan. And the way you come up with your 5-year goals is public. We partnered with the Mclean Commission and the 5-year plan details the activities. Why are we approving? And that's the case because we're not able to aren't able to get final public. Don't want approval on the most hopefully. So that's what we have there for public services. And there's a bit of a factor of path not having that Q4 expenses, and so that's just. What we have next then are the infrastructure and public projects that are proposed. So you'll see that or public facilities exactly. Well, publics that serve the public. So in following there, proposed to put a good amount of over money that was proposed or that was allocated towards site. So that's in the $1,000 this year. It's here below. Money toward public. That's a great resource that serves almost solely low to moderate income and individual CDBG-CV funds, tree planting, and $2,000, a combination of 2021 and 2020 along Orlando Avenue. On that street, you happen to know that it's quite barren right now, and there are various reasons for that as far as soil quality goes there. But what we're proposing to do this coming year is put $30,000 toward the installation and short-term maintenance of these trees. And so in that way, by bidding that out using CDBG-CV funds, we don't put extra burden on the Parks Department. And so it's also a great partnership though with them in order to come up with the right trees that would make it in those areas and put out a request for proposals here later in the year. But anywho, $30,000 proposed for tree planting along Orlando Avenue, which is an area that's very heavily used by transit riders, Connect Transit riders here in Normal, and is also just a especially dense residential area here in Normal. Next up then, we have housing related activities. First off, we have the town's down payment assistance program. This is going to be funded with a combination of carryover funds and New Year funding, and that would carry over into the future should not all of it be spent, which is kind of expected within this program year. And this is the program that sometimes generates program income. So the way that the down payment assistance program works is that a person receives a second mortgage that is forgiven over a 5-year period in the amount of the maximum amount right now of $3,000. And that amount is forgiven over 5 years if a person just stays in that household. But if they happen to move, they do have to pay back the remainder of that amount, however many years they are into that 5-year mortgage. So sometimes that money comes back to the town, and that's technically coded as program income, and it just goes right back into the down payment assistance program. So next up there, we have a second year of our partnership with Habitat for Humanity of Mclean County's A Brush with Kindness program. This has been a great partnership this last year, and even being stymied by the pandemic here, they were able to get a number of projects done. We want to continue to partner in doing that. It's a great program. So we're proposing $15,000 in program year 21-22 dollars, as well as some carryover from 2020. Next up then, we have it's our second year of partnering with Corn Belt and Bucks. And what we're proposing here is to carry over funds from 2020 just to continue to partner in the construction of accessibility ramps on the exterior of homes, income qualified and or homes of persons with disabilities. So that's a great program, and we want to continue that, and we're excited to. Next up then is the town operated household emergency repair program. This program is the only one that was unfortunately not able to operate due to the pandemic. So 2020 was to be the first year that this program would operate with CDBG-CV or CDBG funds, I should say. But due to the pandemic and the need for town staff to focus efforts and time on operating the COVID-19 related housing assistance program, this one had to be set aside. But as the proposed action plan outlines and kind of noted above here tangentially, we were able to partner with Habitat for Humanity and Corn Belt and Bucks to get to make sure that folks that did have household emergency repair programs or rehabilitation projects to carry those out through other partnerships. So it's unfortunate, and it's our sincere hope that we continue this program in the future. If not this year, the next. We want to keep these funds programmed for that as we can. That's a goal of the 5-year plan. But it's nice that this past year, even with limited resources, we were able to help folks out through these partnerships with these valued partners we have. Finally, then, we have $25,000 proposed for acquisition and clearance for housing. So this is money carried over from some time ago now, program year 2017, 2018. And what this is money set aside for the acquisition of either blighted or abandoned or dilapidated structures here in Normal for their either their purchase or their clearance, and then subsequent donation to Habitat for Humanity for the construction of income qualified housing. So that's another goal of the 5-year plan, is to do at least 2 of these projects, at least purchase 2 homes, hopefully, or 2 properties to become homes in this 5-year period. Next, then, we have program administration activities, and similar to public services, there's a cap on the amount of funding that can go toward this, and for good reason. It's 20%, although the town routinely never puts anywhere near that amount toward any kind of just solely staff costs or anything like that. The town wants to put these into projects and activities that benefit people out there in the community. So with that, the majority of general program administration you see here is about $33,000, $34,000. A lot of that's carryover from previous years. That goes toward general program administration. That's stuff like the publication of notices, different training opportunities as they come up during the year. And this is also where it's kind of a good place to put a little bit of cushion should a program come up in future year, during the program year that you go back and amend your plan to come up with it. There's usually some amount of funding in program administration that could go toward that. So that's the largest chunk there. But we do have two programs specifically that we're proposing for this coming year. The first one is $15,000 for the Prairie State Legal Services partnership that the town has. This would be its second year, and the fair housing program that they operate for normal residents. And given the pandemic, the amount of funding that went toward this program this current year was it went toward good use, is what I'm meaning to say. I don't think there's been another time where the need to educate residents and households of their rights and just eviction proceedings. I don't know if it's ever been greater. So we funded this program at $10,000 this past year, and we're proposing 15 now, knowing that there's going to be an increase likely of evictions this year, and we want to be as helpful as we can there in that respect. And again, there is a cap at play here. Next up, then, we have $24,000 for the Mclean County Regional Planning Commission and its regional housing initiatives. This is a program that this is a partnership rather, that we've been in with the City of Bloomington, Regional Planning Commission, and other public service providers here in the community these last, I think it might be 3-4 years now. Anyway, we're proposing a slight increase there, but this is a great amount of research that's done each year. And then the Mclean County Regional Planning Commission and its staff also administers or kind of leads the Regional Housing Advisory Committee that operates, and is the amount of research that comes out of this partnership is far more than you would expect $24,000 to come up with. So this is a very important administration program project that we'd like to continue. So we're proposing that amount there. Finally, then, CDBG-CV funds. Those are these funds, as I described earlier, that have already been put toward a project, but just for education's sake, starting April 1, this is the amount of money that we had programmed for direct assistance. So that's money straight to folks that are having trouble or getting caught up on rent, utilities, mortgage, in some cases. That $420,000 proposed directly for that, and then $33,000 proposed for program administration. And program administration is being done through a partnership with Mid-Central Community Action. So we're very happy to be partnering and continuing that program as long as it's necessary. And hopefully it's not necessary terribly long into the future here, but it's great to have a partner like Mid-Central. And we're fortunate to have this much money moving into a period now where the eviction moratoriums may be lifted. So with that is all the goals and activities that are to be addressed in this coming program year. So public comment now. I just want to provide some next steps or some background on how to provide comment here in the future and just kind of where we're at in the public comment period. So right now we're in the midst of a 30-day public comment period. That'll run through April 30th. So that's 15 more days for comment after tonight. If you click on this link here, if you happen to be watching on YouTube, this is the link where you can find a PDF of the town's proposed action plan. Written comments can be provided to the address you see there or to my email address, tlong@normal.org, anytime before 5 p.m. on the 30th. And then after the comment period wraps up, all comments will be collected and provided to the Normal Town Council along with the proposed plan for their review at their May 3rd meeting at 7 p.m. Provided that the proposed plan is approved, it will be submitted to HUD thereafter. So that's kind of just a sense for the next steps here. So with all that, that is what I have as far as the presentation goes and a bit of outlining. So with that, I want to open it up to public comment. I know we have one public commenter that I hope is still on the line here that I didn't bore too terribly much. So Mr. Bush, if you have any questions or comments, please chime in with those now. And then anyone that would like to join here that happens to be watching on YouTube, just get a hold of me through the means noted there in that description, and we'll admit you to the meeting. So thank you, Mr. Bush. Go right ahead if you like.
Thank you. I don't know if I'm going to be as formal. I'm curious about your ability to reallocate funds from the proposed plan that you presented tonight to what's ultimately going to be adopted and presented to HUD.
Got it. Okay. So when a municipality receives notice of exactly how much it's going to be getting, there's a clock that starts. And so you come up with your plan as quickly as you can. You get it out there for the public, and then it has to be submitted before this deadline. So at this point, the plan as it exists right now is pretty solid. That said, so what I'm meaning to say here, so that the plan that is proposed right now, the one that will be presented to council on May 3rd, that can be changed if amendments, or if just revisions to maybe the amounts or the programs that are proposed here, those can be made. But even after a plan is approved, if a individual, group, town council members, anything like that, if there's a consensus on another program that should maybe come to be, or a reallocation of funding, that can come in the form of an amendment, or discussion with staff to be proposed back to the normal town council for an amendment to be made and then submitted to HUD. So as far as I hope that's somewhat helpful there. The plan that's proposed right now, there's kind of a timeline on getting that before council for approval in some fashion. There could be minor amendments that could be made to it between now and May 3rd, or at the table, I suppose, on May 3rd. But there can be amendments made to the plan at any point in the year, and so that's kind of what was addressed in one of the earlier slides. There is that due to the pandemic, the town received additional funding, so an amendment had to be made. So should that happen again, we have to go through that process. But if there's enough support for a reallocation of some amount of funding to a different program, then that's an amendment that would also be considered, or could be considered.
So that's what I would be asking for, is the consideration of an amendment to increase the funding to both PATH and Prairie State Legal Services. I know that conflicts with the policy, as you outlined, is going to salary. But I think it also recognizes the effort to provide resources, specifically pandemic related. And at this time, those efforts are just going to be best realized at staff level, especially at the nonprofit level. And it just doesn't seem like limiting those funds, even under the cap, in light of what needs to be done, is consistent with what the plan wants to do, in my opinion.
Sure. Gotcha. Well, if it wasn't terribly clear earlier, I apologize. So the caps that I kind of described there, and sir, I completely agree with you. This is why this is frustrating for a lot of municipalities, these caps that are in place. It's a cap that's put in place by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, so we all have to operate by those rules, and there's unfortunately no exception that can be made to it. So there's not a possibility to increase the amount of funding to the PATH program that currently exists. Without stripping down the budget to the Unity Community Center, another valued partner that provides an invaluable service to, especially now that kids need an outlet. So we don't want to cut their funding. They actually did see a cut, but we did increase PATH what we felt was a good amount. A good amount as far as what we're able to adjust there. So that said, if in the future CDBG-CV funds, those ones that are tied specifically to the pandemic, if there's a demonstrated need or a gap that exists out there, principally or specifically for those that are homeless, there's a possibility that those CDBG-CV funds could be reallocated from the COVID-19 related housing assistance program and put towards some kind of partnership with PATH. And I don't want to speak for PATH or pretend to. So there'd have to be some amount of discussion of their capacity, their means, what a need exactly would be. But those CDBG-CV funds, what's interesting about them is that they lifted that 15% cap on public services for CDBG-CV funds. So that's a possibility in the future. And that's something that staff has been considering, I'll be honest, is that as we move forward here into the pandemic, it's, funds have gone out slower than we first expected for housing assistance. And should that continue? Should there come another program, either by the state or federal government, that addresses housing insecurity, rent mortgage utility assistance, if that takes care of the need here locally, then there's some potential to be flexible with that funding that we currently have allocated to that, and maybe move it toward homeless prevention, homeless outreach, homeless services. Specific to your other point there about Prairie State Legal Services, we're very, that is another program that's capped. The amount of we did increase it $5,000 this coming year, thinking that just as you described there, that's the amount of eviction proceedings that are likely to take place. Knock on wood, they don't. But if they do, there's a great amount of need and support that's going to be needed for those folks, legal in particular. So we did increase that, knowing that would be the case for this coming year. Again, that's we're kind of capped there, so we probably, and that's a program we've only operated for 2 years, so it's always it's kind of also at play. If it's a partner that you've not a municipality's not been involved with very long, you do have to kind of weigh the amount of funding you give to them in those initial years just for due diligence, and that's something that's imposed by HUD as well. But you do want to take that into play. But we're happy that we're able to increase the amount of funding we did there. That said, again, if pandemic related fair housing assistance comes to be, if we were able to tie fair housing assistance back to the pandemic, which would not be hard, there's some potential. And again, just as I didn't want to speak for PATH, I won't speak for Prairie State Legal Services, but there's some possibility for an increase of funding maybe to that program with CDBG-CV funds that don't have that cap, as I described, either on program administration either. So I'm sorry that's such a terribly long-winded answer there, but I hope it's helpful. And your comments will be noted here and provided to the town council and HUD as well.
Very good. I really appreciate it. I had one final question, if I could.
Please.
Is there a provision in the COVID relief for fare relief for using Connect Transit? In other words, could you use COVID relief money to help subsidize fares for Connect to help people get around town in the pandemic, as it were?
Gotcha. So that what is the rules are evolving on CDBG-CV funds since day one now. But where things stand right now, kind of the chief goal always of these funds was preparation, prevention, and response to the pandemic. So if you can draw a clear line, for housing assistance, that's a clear line. But the impacts that the pandemic has had on people's ability to pay rent, mortgage, utilities, that's clear. So that's, of course, can be funded with CDBG-CV funds. We'd have to think about or consider a way, how maybe it's. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to think through this with you here. Maybe I won't say no, I guess, as far as CDBG-CV goes. If you can tie, maybe a person's loss of income has made it difficult for them to, afford, Connect Transit fares or, the ability to ride on there. There is, I suppose there's some possibility. I don't want to say yes or no sitting right here. I'd want to look into the regulations a little bit better here. But if you can make a clear line between a need in your community and the pandemic, the pandemic having caused it, it's likely the case that CDBG-CV can be used to address it. That said, it's limited funds, a multitude of priorities, and that you have to think about when it comes to this funding. I guess I wouldn't say no, but I wouldn't also say yes, knowing I need, we'd want to look into that. In particular, just connecting it back to the pandemic and any HUD guidance that's out there as far as, public transit fares, fees, that kind of thing.
Thank you again. I misspoke earlier. I actually had one final question.
Sure.
On the ADA and sidewalk improvement project, to the layperson, it looks like nothing's happening there because the amount that's being carried over is essentially the amount being budgeted each year. Are there specific projects in there, and has the pandemic delayed them, or is there something else going on we're not understanding just reading through the plan? Is the first part of that question. The second part is, could the CDB fund actually a project developed during the plan year, and then that be applied to that project? For instance, say accessibility at the ARC owned by the township becomes an issue, they could apply for the ADA CDBG fund. Is that close?
Got it. Okay. I'll try and address your first one there and remind me if I get off track with it. So um, the town actually spent, and I think the plan notes that. And if it doesn't, that's something we definitely want to have in there. I believe that the town spent around $160,000 in low to moderate income areas in the construction or improvement of accessibility ramps and sidewalks. So that was the majority of that money was carryover from previous years. So I think it was I know it was a combination of 2018 funds that were carried forward, as well as some from, or sorry, 2019 and 2020 funds that kind of combined there to address that. So it's certainly not that you could talk to the engineering department. It's certainly not the case that nothing has been done with those funds. That said, we allocated a good amount, a healthy amount, as you note there, for sidewalk and ADA ramp improvements, knowing that that was the chief concern or priority as relates to infrastructure. So it could be the case that maybe I don't want to say that we have, I think it was more an issue of, I guess what I'm getting at is I don't want to say that those funds could not be used for sidewalks, because there's every indication that they could be. There's a number of, every sidewalk or ADA ramp that gets approved, or that could be getting CDBG-CV funding has to go through an environmental review process. And so there's some delay in that attributes to, maybe not as many getting done in a year as possible. But that said, that, contractors in the engineering department, contractors in particular, can only work so fast. And I'd have to assume that last year the pandemic had some impact just on speed as well too, and especially in those early months, that those prime spring into summer months where it's not terribly hot and they can be out working. So I'm sure the pandemic had some impact there on the total number that were done. And so that's an unusual thing to see that much carryover for sidewalks, as you know. But we're confident that that can be spent. Now, should we come to find in a year or two that those funds, maybe we're just putting too much to sidewalks. We don't believe that to be the case. But if those funds aren't getting used terribly quickly, then we will want to consider what's another best use for those. As far as like partnering with folks like at the ARC there, operated by the Normal Township. Those funds, you can, just like the town is partnering with the community healthcare clinic at this time, CDBG funds can go toward improvements at any kind of public serving facility. Now you'd want to make it so that, or you'd want to be sure that that facility is one that serves at least 50% low to moderate income residents, and so, or clientele or something like that. So funds could very easily go toward a project like that at some public facility, some public serving facility. And so that's how it goes. A lot of municipalities, some, I won't say it, I don't know the exact statistics, but some municipalities take applications every year to see how they'd like to have CDBG funds. People submit applications for projects that would be CDBG funded, and then it's either staff or a kind of a review panel kind of reviews those projects and prioritizes, sees how they align with the action plan and other goals that a municipality might have, and maybe and go about funding them. That's one approach. The one the town has had forever is just to, well, I won't speak to forever, but as long as I've been here and years previously that I've audited, it's been the case that we just seek out partnerships where we can. And so, and thankfully, it's the case that nonprofits know that they can reach out to us, and like Community Healthcare Clinic for that instance. And in the past, they had projects. So we had an amount of CDBG funding. We planned ahead. We came up with a project there. That's the case with this upcoming project as well. So, and again, another long-winded answer. I apologize, but we're confident that we can continue to that we will be able to use these CDBG funds allocated for sidewalks, and we can be flexible come into the future in partnerships with others.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Just one final question on that, and I promise it's my final question.
No worries. I've never had someone speaking. This is great. Yeah.
Are there any DBE goals on those requirements for those public works projects?
Could you repeat that? Sorry, one more time.
Are there any DBE goals for those sidewalk projects? Are you set asiding any? Do you have any set asides for disadvantaged businesses, or are there any nods there for those funds?
Gotcha. There is a priority, of course, at HUD. Well, any kind of any Section 3 businesses. Those are ones that you want to. HUD kind of encourages well, more than kind of encourages. They do encourage that you partner with those businesses, help them out as you can, come up with projects, that kind of thing. That said, there's very few that we're aware of here locally. Otherwise, at this point, the sidewalk funds are, ADA ramps. So I guess specific to the funding that goes to Corn Belt and Bucks. That's for residential properties. Those accessibility ramps on the exteriors of homes. Specific to sidewalks and ADA ramps, we've made the priority to focus on residential areas, and that's of course a priority too for HUD. CDBG is kind of principally, it can be used very effectively and precisely for economic development, but kind of our interpretation, or the chief goal for our program here has always been residential focus. So that's why that's where all the funding goes at this point, is residential areas, low to moderate income census tract and block group neighborhoods for infrastructure projects and stuff like that. But again, that'd be another great project in the future if we hear from folks, or if enough need is it comes to be. I guess I'd like to see us do more in that realm into the future. But at this time, we just focus on ADA ramps and accessibility improvements, either on homes or in residential areas. Okay, so with that, folks, I'm going to flash up this screen here. Anyone that happens to be watching on YouTube, and again, the instructions on how to join the meeting have been down in the description section, but here they're flashed up on the screen again. So what I'm going to do is, as I'm getting near hoarse for talking this long, I'm going to just leave this screen up here, mute myself, and come back on. Should anyone decide they want to join, just email me, get a hold of me at that phone number there, 309-212-6881, or email me at tlong@normal.org. I'll admit you into the meeting. We can go back to any slides that have been covered thus far, or answer any questions you have, or of course, accept comment. And I want to thank you in particular, Mr. Bush, for getting a hold of us here ahead of time, and also joining. As I said, you're the first one we've had. So it's nice to not just have me talk to a screen for 15 minutes and hope people are watching on YouTube. So I really appreciate it, and thank you. Hello again, anyone that happens to be watching on YouTube. This is Taylor Long with the Town of Normal again. I'm just following up here. We've got 5 minutes here before the close of the public comment, or the public hearing, rather. But I want to again remind you that there are 15 days after today to still provide comment um, on the proposed action plan here. We've had one person here tonight. We're happy to have him. We'd love to have more. Um, as I said, there's 15 more days of comment available. There's a link right here and in the description of this YouTube video as well. And then my contact information. Just get a hold of me if you'd like to obtain a copy somehow or another of the proposed action plan for this coming year. And then to provide comment, you can email me at tlong, T-L-O-N-G, at normal.org, or place a letter or anything you like in the mail. Well, maybe not anything you like, but some comments here on the proposed plan to the address you see there. Again, after that, then the proposed action plan will be submitted to the Normal Town Council for review at its May 3rd meeting, Monday, May 3rd at 7 p.m. Thereafter, it will be submitted to HUD for its review and then hopeful approval there soon after, so that these funds that will be allocated this year can be received by the town and put toward good use. So again, I want to thank you, anyone who happens to see this on YouTube in the coming days, anyone who's watched here tonight, um, and just appreciate your time. Please provide comment if you have any. Click the link here and noted here on this slide, or just get a hold of me at tlong, T-L-O-N-G, at normal.org to get a copy of the of the proposed action plan, I should say, and then figure out how to provide comment here before the close of the period on the 30th. Again, thank you and take care, and hope to receive your comments soon.